for the first of 6 programmes looking at the way in which one big London hospital set about performing major surgery on itself.
New Year's Eve 1 year ago, King's College Hospital, London. The last security check of the year. Over the next 12 months, this great hospital will be subject to a ruthless efficiency drive. Everyone will be affected as failings are uncovered. All this as King's moves towards trust status and the new competitive health world. There will be shock waves everywhere, but tonight it's business as usual. In maternity, a couple await their first baby.
Fell and just hit the corner of the wall.
And in accident and emergency, the touchstone of the hospital, tonight looks like most others.
As he's hit the corner of the wall, he's like hit the floor as well, you know?
Emergency nurses.
Hospital fall over a wall. His face.
He looks in the eyes.
They cope expertly, but there are problems all round. Young or old, there's privacy for no one. Upstairs, the operating theatres are 80 years old. This one has a recovery area doubling as a storeroom. Around the kitchens, the dirt is accumulating. The walls are crumbling. There are holes in the ceilings. This is what comes through the holes to the clinics above. Switch on the lights and cockroaches are everywhere. The problems extend beyond dirt and decay. These men have collapsed and need intensive care.
He's unresponsive to pain. He's got evidence of long-standing chest disease, and really with the fact that he's had obviously ITU therapy in the last 2 months, we need to transfer him to a high-dependency bed, and we don't have one here. He's not self-ventilating, he's making weak respiratory efforts. So how many ITU beds have you got there? You've got 1 ITU bed, so you can take either or, but not both. Yeah. Okay, can you put me back through the switchboard then? Speed up the compressions a bit. Got 1.
Today we need to go one, so I think...
He goes because he came first.
Yeah. I mean,
King's own intensive care unit is too small for local needs. But upstairs, the world-famous liver department has its own special care unit. The prestigious kidney and cardiac departments also have intensive care beds. Patients from all around the world are treated here. But there's no intensive care bed for the man from round the corner.
So we've got no beds
and
in London.
until it's after scan, we can't
No
decide
beds
in Epsom.
And nowhere North London, Norfolk Park, Harrow.
That's all we can do. And Northampton.
Can't get to Northampton.
I tried the Whittington, the London, you name it, I've tried them.
Canterbury, Medway. Try Medway.
Staff call the poverty here and the glamour of the specialist units upstairs the two faces of King's. Here, as in so many hospitals, the best and the worst of the NHS can be just a ward away from each other. A new year and a new man who says he'll change everything. The man who'll attempt to turn King's upside down is Chief Executive Derek Smith. At 44, he's one of the new generation of hospital chiefs given more power by government reforms than their predecessors ever dreamt of. He moved to King's a year ago, attracted by its world-beating medicine. He found other things less impressive.
I was shocked by the physical condition. A lot of the wards hadn't seen a paintbrush for years. A lot of the services in those wards didn't work. There were no bedhead units, no over-bed lights even, which are basic to care. A lot of the decoration in relatively new areas was in very poor condition.
The attitude of his 5,500 workers worried him too.
People weren't clear about the objectives that they had or should have in relation to King's as a whole. So the impression that I had overall was that we had a series of corner shops linked almost accidentally by a steam heating system, and that they didn't see themselves necessarily as part of a big corporation providing valuable services. And I think that that's one of the most fundamental things that we have to deal with here.
Smith's first move was to seek out doctors who wanted radical change and to recruit his own brand of tough manager. But elsewhere in King's, mutters of doubt were soon being heard.
The management improved things for themselves, you know, by taking on more staff.
So John did the race, and he sort of limped off as well. It's not really going to be acceptable. He's now got a calf problem.
Well, the morale in this hospital is dropped down to limits of bottom.
Good morning, King's Healthcare. Can I help you? They are engaged. Can you hold?
Morale is low because you've got doctors here that come to the window to get their bleeps that have been here 10, 12 years, and you speak to them and they can see how the place has gone down. Whose fault it is well, they blame it on the cutbacks.
What do you blame it on?
Oh, no, really, I couldn't. Well, yeah.
There's too many chiefs,
yes.
Not enough Indians,
there you go.
to be honest.
Say that again?
So there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians.
What do you mean by that?
There's too many in top management.
Sorry, can you
too many new positions being opened for management, 25 grand and upwards, and there's not enough nurses, doctors. They don't pay them enough to stay in the health authority. Doctors are going to America.
They always say there are too many chiefs and too few Indians. Our strategy here is to get the right people in the right place to do the job that's needed. Because if we don't actually have the management in place to be able to deliver the kind of changes that we want, then we can't possibly get the rest of the organisation to commit themselves to it. If the management is not performing, then the rest of the organisation cannot perform.
January. The move on managers is signalled by an inconspicuous arrival, David Fry from the King's Fund Institute. It's developed an audit for hospitals, a sort of MOT which tests the performance of every department. Smith wants his managers put through it.
What would be helpful, I think, is if we could try to decide when the launch is going to be, and then we can get
Mary Curry,
the appropriate
responsible for launching the audit at King's.
Is it helpful, do you think, to have given people copies of the organisational audit information beforehand, to give it out to them on the day, subsequently?
Managers will be given 3,000 standards and a deadline to comply with them.
Something about it beforehand.
It's called organisational audit.
I'm David Fry. My title is the Senior Survey Manager with the King's Fund Organisational Audit Programme. So in that respect, I oversee our work with about 100 hospitals at the moment, and also...
2 weeks later, Fry and Curry set out their audit proposals to key managers.
Or do we say that this is so important that the link person has to be the manager, him or herself, and that they have to take personal responsibility for making sure that this happens and account for progress?
I think that's the only way you're going to get true commitment, by doing it with the head of department.
It will be a search for inefficiency, be it in the kitchen or the theatre.
Be the head of department that will be held accountable for progress. I think that's a very important message.
That probably needs to go out on the launch.
After the deadline, an outside team will spend a week judging who's made it and who hasn't. The committee fear many will be found wanting.
The hospital has a long tradition of doing things on an informal, oral basis. Very few things are written down.
I don't think it'd be atypical.
Well, it's a particular. I think, in my experience, it's a particular problem.
It's particular. Right.
I think it's one of the areas I'd like to signal now as being of particular concern, that there is a huge amount of work, almost a cultural change necessary in getting people to think about their work systematically. It doesn't happen at the moment, and it causes major difficulties in all sorts of ways.
Half an hour later in outpatients, that informal way of doing things is having its normal effect. One doctor hasn't turned up, no one knows why, and another's list of appointments has gone missing.
Skin consultants have actually been mislaid. I'm going to go to the other departments and look for them quickly, all right? The ophthalmology's already gone through.
All right,
Okay.
Gone. All right, so you'll check the other pigeonhole.
The search is on. Up to 4,000 records go missing every year.
First availables gone through, Lucky. First availables. Yeah. First gone through. Yes, they have. They have? Yeah. Have you got any for defibrillator come over? Got the defibrillator? No, I haven't. No. Is there any laying about which they might have been linked onto?
The search is fruitless. The consultant's used to it and practiced at dealing with the unlucky patient.
The nurse will bring a patient into outpatients and say, Mrs. Jones has come back for the results of her test, and she's a little upset. I open the green folder and there's nothing there but a blank piece of paper, because the notes are lost. And you can understand my difficulty then in trying to console Mrs. Jones and convince her that she might have to come back next week, or that I will leave outpatients to go and try and find somebody who will go and find the test that might be missing. But I don't even know at this point what the tests are unless I start from the beginning again. And if I ask her to come back again next week, it could be that next week I'm faced with the blank piece of paper again.
One floor up, a bypass operation is being performed by a top heart surgeon. It's a success, but in the background, a vital piece of equipment has gone wrong again.
What's up?
We have a leak between the Bodoc seal and the oxygen cylinder.
I mean, this isn't the first time this has happened, is it?
Well, no, it's not. It's been checked before, but it just seems to have occurred again.
Well, let's have a look. It's this cylinder here, is it?
Yeah.
The leak, spotted half an hour ago, has not yet been reported. Staff sometimes have to make up the rules as they go along.
Well, what have you actually done about it? Have you reported it to the theatre manager? Is she aware of the problem?
Not as yet, no. I haven't got time to report it because I've just had to change it because the list has to continue. So I've just got a new machine, put it in theatres and taken this out of service, and I'll go and report it as soon as I can.
And the anaesthetist is aware of that?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so this machine is going out.
Yeah.
What about a replacement machine?
Well, I don't know. I mean, this is our second one. I've just taken this from the equipment room. I mean, the one that I've replaced it with.
There's another mishap. In the corridor outside, spilt blood.
And this has all got to be sorted out, because obviously it's a hazard.
And you're a nurse?
I'm a nurse, yeah. I'm the only nurse based in...
Nurses have to do it because nobody else will. The cleaners haven't been trained to deal with blood. It's blind spots like this and the inefficiency that results which Smith wants the audit to expose.
If one finds low levels of performance, say, in support services, that needs to be dealt with. But most fundamentally, in my view, all of those things come back to one thing, the way in which we manage.
The audit may sort out the bad managers, but it won't necessarily save money, and that's a priority. King's is launching a war on waste. Smith counts on it providing more than £5 million, money he needs to keep the hospital going and begin vital improvements. There have been big cuts before, but Smith insists that money is still being wasted. He's told every department to identify potential savings. In January, all kinds of improvements are promised. Special beds for fragile patients, £2,000 a month to hire. They'll use fewer beds. Potential saving, £50,000 a year. Drugs. For transplants, they'll negotiate a better deal on a key drug, saving £30,000. Switchboard. The plan? Listen in to calls and bill anyone caught making private ones. Estimated saving, £38,000. Laundry. They say they'll freeze 15 jobs, saving £110,000. Dominic Tukachik leads this war on waste. The laundry is a special target.
How do your unit prices now compare with competitors? I mean, who are your competitors, so to speak?
He questions the manager in charge of support services, Hugh Stewart, about the laundry's £1.2 million budget and a workforce 50 strong known to be worried about the future.
It's a job. Whether you like it or not, you've got to do it, innit? You know, it's just a job.
And that's mostly foul work because it's where they're using the theatre, and that's all it is. It's just blood all over the work.
What else can I say? Just worried about losing the job. That's the only thing I'm worried about at the moment.
But the Works Department is perhaps the biggest target. It employs 73 men and costs £3.5 million, but nobody is really satisfied. In ENT, consultants clubbed together to pay for a sink in their restroom. This is how the Works Department left it.
We actually wanted to get outside contractors to do it because we thought we could get a better job, but this was not permitted, and so the internal management and maintenance staff did the work. This is what they did, and we haven't been able to get them back to make good or to improve some of the mess that's been left behind. So we're not very happy about that.
I hope the head of nursing has seen this. This is very...
I did suggest to the chief exec that he came round.
Say, for instance, if my patient is washing here, and then that part of the roof fell on his head.
Yeah, he'd never wash again,
That's very dangerous.
Smith claims that cutting costs in such departments could actually improve their performance, not worsen it.
I think to most people that's a paradox, but to me as a manager it makes complete sense. Very often you find a direct linear relationship between lowering cost and at the same time increasing quality, because you're much more clearer about what you're doing and what you need to deliver, and at the same time you're able to tease out those expenditures that you don't need to make in the first place in order to do so.
But teasing out waste won't be left to the managers alone. In January, Smith calls in management consultants, the men from HealthX. The axemen of the health world. At Guy's and St Thomas's, they showed how to cut £10 million. They worked then and want to work now discreetly. They don't like being filmed.
I took the view that it was necessary to bring in somebody else to look at the place differently and to think differently about it. It was partly that and partly something else. We're going through an enormous change in the management here, and the managers are just in place and they're just learning about their part of the organisation and they're checking it out. I wanted them to have some help.
After their arrival, the men from HealthX all but disappear, but quietly they're vetting every department, every ward.
We had a man coming to monitor us.
How long was he here?
All day from 8 o'clock in the morning till we left. It was quite boring.
All they did was follow them around for a whole day to monitor whatever they thought their work was.
They asked mostly questions like how many staff you could do with it at an absolute minimum.
Basically, could we manage on fewer people that we were managing on now?
Did he press you on that?
We did go back to it several times.
As HealthX gets to work, King's financial position is threatened. It now has to compete for work in the new health market. The renowned fetal medicine unit could suffer. Nearby St Thomas's announces it's going to compete.
Prof, have you seen this? The launch of the £5 million appeal for St Thomas's Hospital to establish Britain's first centre for fetal health.
I mean, that's right over the top. I mean, by fetal health, I take fetal medicine, which we've been doing for 15 years. I mean, de facto, we're the national centre. I mean, actually, I've always felt St Thomas's should have a fetal medicine centre. I mean, they don't have one. But I mean, to suddenly become the national centre overnight is a bit...
And to use that label to raise the money for the £5 million.
I think it's a bit unfair. I mean, well, I mean, you can see the kind of level they're going for. I mean, the symbol is a spotted potty.
We're looking at all our changes this year for
Paul Miller, who runs King's HIV prevention service, has competitors too. but he's confident the local purchasing authority will give him the contract he wants.
HIV prevention, I suspect that this may be one of our one of the more problematic areas. What we're not proposing to do this year is award that contract to yourselves. We've awarded that contract to health promotion.
First of all, we don't feel that health promotion at the moment is able to monitor and to coordinate very specialised types of prevention work. Without getting too emotional about it, I think that's a mistake.
Losing this contract may not sound much in a hospital spending £135 million a year, yet it's worrying. But in February, finances fade into the background as King's makes headlines. In Casualty on a crowded night, a patient had been put on a trolley and forgotten. He died after being left for 6 hours. The Community Health Council is up in arms.
We warned them and we warned the Regional Health Authority and the Minister that there would be tragedies and there would be deaths if they continued to cut beds and to keep the casualty department understaffed and in the disgraceful condition in which people have to lay for very, very long periods.
The impact on King's is traumatic. Staff representatives attack management for conditions in Casualty, and an angry exchange of letters follows. One is pinned up on a notice board.
The specialised units have taken priority, and no clearer is this scene than in Casualty. You get the situation where an old lady from round the corner comes in with a fractured hip and can't get a bed for 12 to 24 hours, whereas a patient can be flown in by helicopter at great expense and have an emergency liver transplant. Well, one recognises that both those patients are in need, but why is the bias seemingly so much towards the specialised patient? That's what we were so concerned about when we wrote the letter.
In a stiff reply, Smith dismisses the criticism as simplistic, but he admits the specialist units, which get regional funds, are much better off financially.
They've been getting income in, and they've been able to grow. The district services, by contrast, have been constrained and not able to grow, even though they've been facing increased demand. So there's been a feeling that there are two classes of people.
Good morning, how are you? Yes. How's things? Yes,
Smith makes visits to accident and emergency to try to lift morale. Waiting times are now being closely monitored.
The longest that was waiting overnight was about from 3 o'clock until 10. His bed came up and he's been treated.
But he also plans to monitor something else, the medics. He believes many of King's problems are aggravated by the attitudes of some doctors and the inefficiency of others. Smith knows that sorting out managers and money will be easy compared with his third target, King's 500 doctors. In tackling them, he's relying on the allies he's built up among the consultants, especially Clinical Director John Costello. He's been asked to sort out the crisis in Casualty.
What time did you come in?
Yesterday. I can't remember the time. About 10 o'clock.
And how do you feel now?
Getting
better. We'll get you a bed as fast as we can.
Costello sees the logjam here as largely the fault of doctors. Too many aren't interested enough in routine hospital duties. They're too busy with other things, like building their own empires. But at this stage, he'll only hint at the problem.
There could be a positive side to all of this. Publicity we've had has been felt by everybody at King's, and everybody feels very conscious of the problems that we've got in A&E, and therefore the awareness of the need for patients from A&E it's got to be said, much higher than it was before this publicity arose. So if that puts pressure on people internally to focus more on our A&E patients than perhaps in some of the more specialised areas, then that's a useful lever.
Derek Smith is less guarded about the doctors and what will happen if they don't come to order.
Our consultants number 176. Where we find some members of the medical staff are not fulfilling their contractual commitment to us, and we think that there are 1 or 2 instances, we shall certainly be discussing with them the fact that we discontinue their contractual arrangements with us.
This hasn't been attempted before, has it? Anywhere?
Not to my knowledge, but if that's the case, it's long overdue.
Derek Smith is a relatively new arrival at King's. In the last 5 years, there has been a total change in the top managers. There is nobody in position who was in top management 5 years ago. And this inevitably has or projects a feeling to senior consultants, particularly, that they've seen it all before. These people will come along, try and perhaps disrupt the organisation in their view, and then they'll be off again. But I'm sure everybody wishes him well, that he can perhaps do something about it, whereas previous managers have failed in many respects.
Can Derek Smith do something about it? Next week, unexpected complications.
And that's at the same time next Tuesday, 8:30.
One in 10 men will use the services of a prostitute. They are men from all walks of life. Some have been seeing the same prostitute longer than they have known their wives. Do you know what your husband is doing tonight? Dispatches explodes the myth